Thank you for joining us. My name is Carrie Smith, and on behalf of Cumulus Networks, I'd like to welcome you to Unattended Deployment with Zero-Touch Provisioning. Presenting today will be our automation guru, Leslie Carr. Leslie is a member of the customer experience team at Cumulus Networks and is a longtime network engineer who became enthralled by various stages of unattended deployment and automation when she joined the Wikimedia Foundation. Her past experiences include Google, Craigslist, and Twitter. The webinar will be about 30 to 45 minutes. We'll answer a few questions from participants at the end if time permits. For those of you interested, you have the opportunity to ask questions during the webinar by using the window marked questions. Simply type in your question and click send. You can also tweet us your questions, and our Twitter handle is @Cumulus Networks. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Leslie. Thanks, Leslie.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm getting over the flu, so I might sound like I smoke a few packs of cigarettes a day and lose my voice a little. So, who am I? I'm a longtime operations engineer. I've worked for a lot of major websites that you may have heard of. And I really sort of straddle the line between network engineering and systems administration. And of course, earlier this year, I joined Cumulus Networks. I was really excited by the idea of mixing Linux with normal network engineering. And especially the being able to use all of the automation tools that I use for my servers on network gear. So just in case any of you have forgotten, Cumulus Linux is a Debian-based Linux distribution for network switches. Our whole idea, and the part that I'm really excited about, is that you can manage your network switch just like you do your servers. You can use existing Linux-based tools to configure your switches, and we're very close to Debian Wheezy, if any of you are Debian fans out there. If you go to our website, you can see our hardware compatibility list. We run on a lot of bare metal switches, which is also really exciting. You can choose your switch and choose your software. But all of you here today are here to learn about how to set up your switches with zero-touch provisioning. So, there's a common problem in in the network world. Sorry. Traditionally, installing your network gear has sort of sucked, right? And installing a management. It comes pre-installed with some old software, so a lot of times you have to telnet into the box because it doesn't even have SSH. You TFTP a new image over to enable SSH. You might not even be able to use SSH keys, so then you have to type in a password. You copy and paste your configuration, which you've probably just copied and pasted from another switch. And then if you want to do any automation, it's really restricted to Perl and expect scripts. So it's really difficult. But if you compare it, normal server installation is usually really easy, right? You reboot the server, BIOS and Pixie automatically catches. It will automatically TFTP over a boot image. Then that image will pull over the full image, usually via a web server, though it also can be via TFTP. Pre- and post-installation scripts run, like Kickstart is one of the more common post-installation scripts. And then your automation software can manage the configuration and administration of your switch. So that's why Cumulus Networks created ONI. So it's basically like BIOS, Pixie, and Kickstarter all in one. It's based off of a very tiny Linux distribution called BusyBox. And of course, we donated that code to the Open Compute Project because we feel that that knowledge should be out there for everyone. So with ONI, I think this is very important, you can install your switches just like you do your servers. right? You have, with a server, you have a bare metal server. BIOS and Pixie is already on that server when you purchase it. And then you use your system tools to install your server OS, and then use any other applications to manage and configure your servers. Same thing with Cumulus networks. You buy your bare metal switch that comes preloaded with ONI. You use that to install your network OS, preferably Cumulus Linux, and then you can use one of any number of applications in order to manage and configure your network. So how ONI works is first, it looks for an installer. So the absolute simplest way to do this is you can just plug in a USB key to the front panel port. So it'll first look locally. The image just has to be named ONI-installer and then something afterwards. It'll go through a waterfall looking for both architecture and hardware type. It will also then try ETH0, the management interface, will try the DHCP. If that doesn't work, it will look for IPv6 neighbor in case you have an all IPv6 network. And then if that doesn't work, it TFTPs to an already known address to request the file. And then after Cumulus Linux has already been installed via ONI, ZTP kicks off, which is great. ZTP, or zero-touch provisioning scripts, are triggered on either DH client exit, which means after DHCP happens, or there's also another process starting in the 2.5 release, which is coming out later this quarter, which will look for USB sticks and will look for specifically named files. The script must contain the line Cumulus-auto provisioning that basically tells the switch, yes, you are allowed to run this. That line can be commented out and probably should be commented out depending on which language you're using. And the script can be in any of Perl, Python, Ruby, or Shell. You can choose whichever language you're most comfortable with, and the script will also run as root. For USB, the ZTP script looks for a specific file name waterfall. So it will look, if you look at the example lines here, first it looks for Cumulus-ZTP. We'll attempt to look for the architecture, which is PowerPC or x86. Then the vendor, and then model revision. So if you look here, you can actually have for different architectures, if you so desire, to have different scripts all on the same USB stick. So you don't have to remember which file you're using. Then with DHCP, it looks for option 239. Here I've just pasted a nice example, dhcp.conf, which you can use. I personally use the ISC DHCP server, but using any DHCP server. The important part is that you have this Cumulus provision URL 239, because that's what the Cumulus Linux switch will look for. And then here is the text string, which is the URL. It can be v4 or v6. It just has to be a URL, uses the HTTP protocol. And then when it is attempting to get to that file, the Cumulus Linux switch will send these headers. So if you so desire, you can have an interactive process which will actually, for your web server, which will actually look and could give a different zero-touch provisioning script depending on which architecture you would like. And here is an example script. So if you look here, this is a bash script right here. Then lines 3 through 5 or 3 through 6, we're just trapping errors because I don't know about you, but when a script fails, I like to be able to easily find out where and what it failed on. Makes troubleshooting much easier. Here in line 9, we're just adding a new repository. Lines 12 and 13, your normal apt-get upgrades, since we're a Debian-based distribution. We use apt. And then on line 14, we're installing Puppet, because in this example, we're going to use Puppet to configure our switches. Line 16 is just letting you know, configuring Puppet. Make sure it starts on boot. We restart Puppet, which will trigger a Puppet run. Line 21 is the important Cumulus auto-provisioning comment. You can see it's commented out because Bash obviously would not know what to do with this string. But this does tell Cumulus Linux that you are allowed to run this script. And then it exits with exit code 0. Exit code 0 is important because that will trigger the auto-provision process to update autoprovision.conf. So actually I'm going to show autoprovision.conf first. So as you can see here, autoprovision.conf has this little provisioning statement. So both that it's enabled, so that enabled means it will look for ZTP, and it will, and if as soon as a ZTP script exits with code 0, it will then change the complete statement to true from false. If you want to re-enable ZTP, you can change this complete statement to false. But obviously, you wouldn't want any time you reboot your switch for some provisioning script to run, because especially if you have a more complex provisioning script, you wouldn't want to overwrite any existing configuration that you may have. It also will tell you, date, time, and the method that it used, just so then just so you know, all right, ZTP ran, and this is where it ran from. Just great to know for any troubleshooting. So now I'm going to show you a video of a switch booting up and using the ZTP script, which I showed on slide 16. All right, so if you see here, here's just I just did a screen capture of a switch rebooting. There's U-boot, which is just like a BIOS on all of these bare metal switches. And now that loads ONI. If you see here on the platform, this is telling us which platform this specific switch is. You can see it's a PowerPC Quanta LB9. And the version is the version of ONI. Now ONI is going to look for an installer. It's using DHCP right now, just like many servers do. It starts the service discovery. It's just starting that waterfall of looking through for the proper IPs and names. Now it's just pulling over the image, just double checks its checksum, just like any normal server. If you look right here, you can see under the control file contents, description, OS release, architecture, and which platforms are supported by this specific release. So as you can see here, we're installing 2.2.0, and the Quanta LB9 switch is a PowerPC platform. Also, some parts of this video have been sped up for our viewing pleasure because, most people have seen installations before, and it's not very exciting. You may notice one thing that's different from most servers is that our switches, like most switches, actually have 2 different slots. This is so that you can install a new operating system on one slot and switch back and forth quickly. If you so desire, it's pretty much a standard in the network world, which is also, and it's pretty much close to non-existent in the server world. Some servers do have 2 BIOS slots, but they usually don't have 2 full operating systems. As you can see, the installation's restarted. It's rebooting the box. And now Linux is loading. This is just your normal Debian Linux loading. The switch D not starting is normal and expected because there's no license file, as this is starting brand new from scratch. And then if you look here, now you can see I did a set-x so that you can see what's actually happening. You can see here all of the script I showed you is happening. apt-get update, apt-get upgrade, and now installing Puppet. Puppet has a lot of packages that it depends on, so installing all of those, which is exactly the lines that I showed you in the ZTP script. And one difference is that I actually did service Puppet stop this specific time so that I could more easily capture the Puppet agent run in the next video. All right, now let's go back to the slides. All right, so there you can see autoprovision.com. Since this exited with error code 0, complete equals true would have been set upon the ZTP script exiting. So because this is a Debian-based system, we can do all of our configuration via Puppet. All the configuration you normally have to do in the switch, users, interface configuration, and routing software configuration. In my examples, I'll use Quagga, but you can, if you so desire, you can use Bird or ExaBGP or anything like that. All right, so I'm now going to show you a video of a Puppet run. So if you see here, oh wait, hold on, let me make sure I didn't share that. Sorry. All right. So now, if you see here, I just want to show on the switch that there's only one route, one default route. OSPF, there's no OSPF neighbors, OSPF is not running, and PTM is also not running. So Puppet agent --test is just the command you use to kick off a Puppet agent run. Puppet agent on the server is very verbose, but on the Puppet master is actually not. So that's why I'm showing this from the server perspective. You see here, it's syncing a bunch of files, which we have told it to, which is great. You can have it sync all of your team's SSH keys if you'd like, any set of files, any programs you may have written, interface files. We're changing the message of the day just to show it was configured by Puppet. We're also installing the license and restarting switched, because you'll probably already have your licenses in some central repository. So you want, you don't want to have to SSH into each switch and manually install each license. That would just take a long time and probably be really annoying. We're also updating Quagga and the NTP servers. Once again, you don't want to have to cut and paste all of your configurations, because I believe that makes a great way for manual errors to happen. And so yeah. Oh, and sorry, that went right into the other slide here. So if you also look at the end here, you'll see that all of the OSPF neighbors have come up. PTM status is correct, and there are a full set of routes. So that really took almost no effort on my part, right? All I had to do was kick off a Puppet run, and the switch has already come up. I think it's really useful when you're bringing up, a new data center, because you don't want to have to be the choke point for your team when you're bringing up new data centers. You want the network piece to be done and over with, so everyone setting up services, can do their job as well. Or perhaps you're doing the network and the services. Now, one thing though is that we don't just work with Puppet. We work with a number of automation tools. And another really popular automation tool is Ansible. A lot of people really like Ansible because it's a push model instead of a pull model. With Puppet, there's an agent that runs on each switch or server, and it pulls down the configuration at certain times. So versus Ansible is a push model. There's no agent running on any of these servers, and you decide when to push the configuration. Ansible also shows you very nicely formatted feedback. So for that reason, it's become very popular. So if you look here, I'm going to show you basically the same run, but with Ansible. So here's another ZTP script. The one important thing is that Ansible runs using SSH. So you need to have the SSH keys available to Ansible. So as you can see here, each switch, when it starts ZTP, is going to grab the SSH keys from the server and install them for root authorized keys. Ansible needs to work as root for most of its duties. So I'm going to show you from the server perspective setting up a 4-node Ansible run. This is just a normal two-spine, two-leaf. Once again, a couple of pieces have been sped up just for our viewing pleasure. So if you see here, Ansible, I'm just running the same commands that I ran in the Puppet demo to show you that nothing is up and running right now. Right? There's no neighbors are running. PTM is not running. And there's very few routes. Just the management route. Oh, and of course, no bridges are currently configured on the leafs. So we've written an Ansible playbook, and this will actually push out the different tasks.
Hey Leslie, Leslie, the video's not coming through on our end.
Oh, sorry, I didn't share that here. Thank you for letting me know. All right, there we go. All right, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. So you can see, once again, there's no neighbors, no PTM. No routes, just the management routes. No bridges on the leaves. So now we're going to run an Ansible playbook, which this is just going to set up a OSPF unnumbered two-spine, two-leaf system. It's actually SSHing into the switches to do all of its changes. Here we created 2 users, give them both sudo access. It's actually, because everyone's had the problem when one of their teammates was left, and you don't want to have to go and SSH into every switch and router and find their accounts. You use Ansible. You can push out a new account of a new teammate. You can remove the old account of old teammates. And it's all done. Everyone's happy. And you can use everyone's SSH keys as well. Just like with Puppet, we're configuring the interfaces. We're setting up Quagga. Although, like I said, if you prefer, you can use any other routing software. We just use Quagga because we've actually made a lot of patches to Quagga, and of course we've upstreamed all of them. And now we're doing the Leads playbook. Well, like I had said before, one thing a lot of people like about Ansible is the feedback that you get. You can see on each task, it tells you which task is running, and then it tells you if something changed or if it did not. So, especially if you don't yet trust your configuration management system, you can use this to sort of, to gain that trust, right? You can see exactly what changed, and you can see if anything failed. So it's almost like a nice little CLI dashboard right there. And then, as you can see, all of the OSPF neighbors are up, PTM's up, and everyone has routes. Another cool thing about Ansible is that you can run any command, on all of the hosts. So if you see there, if you see the command, Ansible, you're saying which list of hosts, and then you can use a shell and a shell command. It can be really useful when you're administering your switches. So there we go. Success! You've just set up your data center and you're sitting back and you can have a beer. Now, one thing is I use for all of these examples, I use the Cumulus workbench. It's a set of switches. You have a data center with several racks of switches that you can go into and play around with. We wipe it in between each use, so you don't have to worry about messing it up. Sort of like your own personal lab. And we have a lot of these examples, like the Ansible playbooks I just showed you, and the Puppet modules that I also just showed you, already pre-written and with knowledge base articles for each one. So if you're interested in trying out the Cumulus workbench, you see it there. We've got a nice little survey.
Leslie, we have some great questions coming in. So I'll start out with the first one. If I'm a Cisco CCIE, what are the benefits for me to learn automation versus using CLI and other Cisco management tools?
Well, I feel that there's a couple of reasons. Number one is that none of us work in a vacuum, right? We all want to take a vacation. So if you have all of your configuration management in one centralized location, everyone can see what's going on. You can take a vacation because if someone wants to know how everything's configured, you can just point them at the repository. You can also have peer review because usually with a CLI, your peer review is you put in a command and you have someone stand over your shoulder before you hit enter. I think that's a very dangerous way of peer reviewing, and it's also annoying. What if your colleagues are in another time zone, right? With this way, you can use any of your peer review systems, which you probably already have for other code, for all of your network equipment, which I think is pretty great. And also
Awesome.
time and human error. And that's fine. Because a lot of times, you can be cutting and pasting something. You leave off the last letter of your cut and paste, or you're typing something in. Pretty famously, everyone's meant to type in a set a route and meant to type in /32, but maybe you hit enter and type in /3, right? That could take down your network. You don't want that to happen with this. you can have peer review, you can look things over, and you can even have some automated link checking. So I think it's great. And then also, you just saw me set up 4 switches by hitting enter, right? I think the best administrators are sort of lazy. And so if you can set everything up with not having to worry about errors and doing less work, everyone wins. You can go do more interesting things.
Awesome. Okay. Next question. What tools are Cumulus Linux customers using in production?
So Ansible seems to be one of the most popular ones, as well as Puppet. However, Bao from Uyala gave a great talk about his use of Chef in our network, in Cumulus networks, and all of his Chef recipes are online. As well, we have someone using Salt, SaltStack, another great tool. And you can really use anything. That's one cool thing. We're Linux, so if a new automation tool comes around, you can use it. If you have some homegrown system for your system, your servers, you can use that system as well because we're Linux. There's no special API needed.
Great. So another question. There are a lot of automation tools out there for users. What automation tools are compatible with Cumulus Linux?
Well, I sort of answered that. Pretty much all of them. The big 5 are Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, and CF Engine. And they all work with Cumulus Linux. And if there's one that doesn't work, please let me know because my job is to make sure that everything works seamlessly.
Cool, that's easy enough. Can I install Cumulus Linux on any switch, or do I need specific hardware?
You do need specific hardware that is both ONI and we only support Broadcom Trident-based chipsets right now. So the 2 pieces you need are ONI, because or else you're going to have a hard time loading the software onto the switch. Although ONI is open source, you could put ONI on anything that you have access to the firmware of. And also our actual hardware acceleration platform, we only have drivers written for Broadcom. We are, always excited about other platforms, which we do not currently support. If any of you are working for another platform, we'd love to talk to you.
Great. And then we have 2 more questions. When do you see networking protocols being automated?
That's a tough one. I would like to say yesterday. There are some people doing some great work. Actually, just yesterday was a DevOps for Networks conference down in Mountain View. We have people like Jeremy Schulman, who's been really pushing this. There's the whole NetDev structure in Puppet, which is trying to make a vendor-agnostic sort of language for configuring network switches. I think it's coming. I think in the next, now to 3 years, you'll really see more pushes for it. You even notice some of the more old-fashioned vendors are actually starting to embrace automation because I think they know they have to.
Great. And let's see, actually we have a lot of questions coming in now. What is example code on your current slide?
So if you look at that GitHub repository, we have the Cumulus Workbench, which is, as I said before, a set of hardware that you can go and test out. So we've actually written a lot of demos based on the Workbench. So you can go look at how we do OSPF or BGP using several different automation tools. While these are tailored for the workbenches, you could also go in there, take the code out, and and modify it for your environment. The big differences are just going to be which interfaces that you have hooked up. And you probably also want to take out the test Rocket and Turtle users.
Great. And let's see, do you have any customers using Cumulus in an OpenStack environment currently?
Yes, we do. I've actually been currently working on an OpenStack demonstration along with several of my coworkers, so that will be coming to Bench soon. As well, we support several overlays that automatically integrate. If you're using Nova in a flat network, obviously there's nothing special there, but we are VTEP in point. You can use OVSDB so that and you can use Neutron or Nova to create VLAN automatically. So you can create VXLAN tunnels in between your nodes to create seemingly layered 2 clouds in between of your virtual machines.
Great. And thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. We are now out of time. We hope you found this presentation about unattended deployment useful, and we'd love it if you offered your feedback via the follow-up email. Please tune into our next webinar, October 29th, about unleashing the power of open networking, or you can join us each Thursday for Coffee with Cumulus for a product overview and introduction to Cumulus Linux. Details are available on our website at cumuluslinux.com/webinar. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
And thank you, everyone.